When Sarah announced she needed a solo vacation, I didn't think much of it. After all, we had been married for 8 years, and she had always been a fiercely independent woman. "Just a week to clear my head," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I assumed it was just the stress from work and life catching up with her, so I supported her decision. Little did I know, this trip would change everything. The first few days without her were strange, but I busied myself with work and hobbies. I even thought about surprising her with a weekend getaway of her own once she returned. But as the week dragged on, I started noticing subtle differences in her texts. They became shorter, less frequent, and lacked the usual warmth. Something was off, but I convinced myself it was just my imagination. When Sarah finally came back, she seemed different. There was an odd tension in the air, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. She was quieter, more distant. I tried to brush it off, thinking she was just tired from the trip. But that night, as we lay in bed, she dropped the bombshell. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice trembling. My heart stopped. We had been trying for a baby for years, and this should have been the happiest moment of our lives. But the way she said it, the way she looked at me, I knew something was wrong. I tried to be supportive, to smile through the shock, but then she said the words that shattered my world. "It's not yours." The room spun. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "What do you mean it's not mine?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tears welled up in her eyes as she explained how she had met someone on her trip, how it had been a whirlwind affair, and how she had made a terrible mistake. My mind reeled, struggling to process the betrayal. But what she said next was even more shocking. "I want to keep the baby," she said, her voice pleading, "and I want you to adopt it, to raise it as our own." I was speechless. How could she ask me to do that? To raise the child of the man she had an affair with? It felt like a cruel joke, a twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I didn't know what to say, how to respond. I felt trapped, betrayed, and utterly lost. The next few days were a blur of arguments, tears, and sleepless nights. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't just walk away. Despite everything, I still loved Sarah, and I knew she was struggling with her own guilt and pain. But the idea of raising another man's child was too much to bear. Then one night, I had a long conversation with my best friend, someone I had known since childhood. He listened patiently as I poured out my heart, and then he said something that stuck with me. "This child didn't ask to be brought into this world under these circumstances. It's innocent in all of this. And maybe, just maybe, you can find it in your heart to give this child the love it deserves." His words haunted me, but they also gave me a new perspective. I realized that my anger, though justified, wasn't going to change what had happened. It wasn't going to make the situation better. But maybe, just maybe, I could make something good come out of this mess. I sat down with Sarah the next day, feeling calmer and more determined. "If we're going to do this," I said, "we do it together. But we need to rebuild trust, and that's going to take time," she agreed, tears streaming down her face, and we made a pact to go to therapy, to work through our issues, and to start fresh. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the pain and anger threatened to overwhelm me. But as time passed, we began to heal. We learned to communicate better, to be more honest with each other, and to rebuild the foundation of our marriage. When the baby was born, I was there in the delivery room, holding Sarah's hand. And when I saw the tiny, fragile life in her arms, something shifted inside me. I realized that love isn't always easy, that it sometimes requires sacrifice and forgiveness, but it's worth fighting for. We named the baby Hope, because that's what she represented for us, a second chance, a new beginning. Raising her wasn't without its challenges, but with every smile, every giggle, and every milestone, I found myself falling in love with her more and more. Sarah and I aren't perfect, and our marriage isn't either. But we're stronger now, more resilient. We've learned that love can survive even the darkest of times, and that sometimes, the most unexpected turns in life can lead to the most beautiful destinations.